It was a quiet evening when a woman police officer stopped a man in his car, accusing him of committing a crime. Little did she know, the man she was questioning was actually a respected military officer. What unfolded next would leave everyone stunned. Picture this. You're on your way home after a tiring journey, looking forward to some peace and relaxation. Suddenly, you're pulled over by the police, accused of something you know you didn't do. How would you react? Fear? Anger? Confusion? Commander Adam Carter, a highly decorated officer in the military, had just finished a long deployment at sea and was eager to be reunited with his family. After months away, he was finally headed home to surprise his wife and children. But as he was driving through the quiet night, red and blue lights flashed in his rearview mirror, and a sinking feeling took over. His pulse quickened as he pulled over to the side of the road. A young police officer, her hand poised near her weapon, approached the car with a purposeful stride. The bright beam of her flashlight cut through the night air, her eyes fixed on him. "Step out of the car," she ordered, her voice stern with an edge of suspicion. Adam froze for a moment, unsure of why he was being stopped. He hadn't broken any laws. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked calmly, his confusion evident. The officer didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at him intently, almost like she was reading his every move. "We received a report of a theft," she said after a pause. "A man matching your description, a black male, mid-40s, driving a dark car." The words hit him like a punch. He realized instantly what was going on. This wasn't about his actions. It was about the color of his skin and the assumptions that came with it. "Ma'am, I'm coming from a military deployment," Adam said, keeping his voice steady. "I'm Commander Adam Carter, and I've been traveling all day. You can check my ID if you'd like." The officer, who wore the name Officer Harris on her uniform, didn't budge. She continued to eye him with growing distrust. "Keep your hands where I can see them," she ordered sharply, her flashlight still aimed directly at his face. If you were in Adam's shoes, how would you feel in this moment? How would you respond to the complete disregard for your identity and service? Taking a deep breath, Adam decided to comply, keeping his hands on the steering wheel. He knew better than to make any sudden moves. "Officer Harris," he said again, his tone polite but firm, "I'm just trying to get home. My ID is right here in my wallet." But instead of acknowledging him, Officer Harris signaled for him to get out of the car. "Put your hands on the vehicle," she instructed. "You're being detained for further questioning." In that instant, Adam was no longer the highly respected military officer he had worked so hard to become. He was simply a suspect, a man who, in this officer's eyes, fit a description. As the officer moved closer, another police car arrived. A male officer joined the scene, his eyes scanning Adam with the same suspicion. "Are you sure this is the guy?" the second officer muttered, eyeing Adam with doubt. "He matches the description," Officer Harris replied coldly, her gaze never leaving him. Adam's frustration grew, but he kept his voice level. "Officer, I'm not the person you're looking for. If you just take a moment to check my credentials, you'll see that I'm telling the truth." How would you handle this moment of injustice? Would your patience wear thin, or would you try to stay calm? But Officer Harris didn't acknowledge his words. Instead, she kept him standing, his hands pressed against the car. He could feel the weight of the situation, the disrespect, the misunderstanding. And the longer this dragged on, the more humiliated he felt. Then a third officer arrived, Sergeant Lynn Mitchell, a senior officer who immediately sensed the tension. She took in the situation, noting Adam's posture, one of quiet dignity despite the unfair treatment, and approached with a more open demeanor. "What's going on here?" Sergeant Mitchell asked, looking between the officers. Officer Harris quickly explained her suspicion. But as she spoke, Sergeant Mitchell's gaze shifted to Adam's pocket, where a military ID card was partially visible. "Commander Carter, is it?" Sergeant Mitchell asked, her voice warm with recognition. Adam nodded, relieved that someone was finally paying attention to the facts. Sergeant Mitchell turned to Officer Harris, her expression now one of disappointment. "Did you verify his identity before detaining him?" she asked, her voice stern. Officer Harris hesitated, realizing her mistake. She fell silent, guilt creeping in. This man has served his country for over 2 decades, Sergeant Mitchell continued. You can't just assume guilt based on a vague description. This needs to be addressed. At this moment, did you expect an apology, or should there be more than just words? What does accountability truly look like in situations like this? Officer Harris, clearly rattled, apologized to Adam, but her words felt empty. Later that night, internal reviews and possible disciplinary actions would follow. A small step toward ensuring that such assumptions wouldn't be tolerated again. For Adam, though, the damage had already been done. The apology wasn't enough to erase the feeling of being wrongfully accused, nor the indignity of being treated like a criminal in front of strangers. Despite his years of service, the color of his skin had made him a target in that moment. What needs to change in a society where assumptions can tear down someone's dignity in an instant? What will it take to end racial profiling and injustice? Adam's experience wasn't an isolated one. His story echoed the painful reality faced by so many others. As days passed, Adam's ordeal sparked conversations within his community about fairness, accountability, and prejudice. While the personal pain he endured couldn't be erased, Adam hoped that by sharing his story, others might be inspired to look beyond appearances and stereotypes and to confront the injustices that still linger in society today. As Commander Adam Carter drove away that night, the apology from Sergeant Mitchell still echoed in his mind, but it didn't offer him the peace he was seeking. The experience had shaken him to his core, a reminder that even after years of service, respect, and sacrifice, his identity as a black man would always come before his achievements. No matter how many medals he had earned, no matter the lives he had protected, in that brief moment, he was reduced to nothing more than a suspect in the eyes of a system that had failed to see him for who he truly was. But Adam's story, though painful, was not unique. The road he was forced to travel that night was one that countless others had walked before him. His experience was a reflection of a larger, deeply ingrained issue, one that cannot be ignored or swept under the rug. It is the issue of racial profiling, of presumptions made based solely on appearance, and of a justice system that too often overlooks the humanity of those who are caught in its web. His story serves as a powerful reminder that, for some, the struggle for equality and fair treatment is far from over. However, as Adam's ordeal began to stir the conversation within his community, he realized something hopeful. Change starts with discomfort. It starts when people are forced to confront the harsh realities that many would rather ignore. By sharing his story, Adam helped open a dialogue about justice, accountability, and the consequences of prejudice. His experience was a catalyst for change, a challenge to those who would otherwise remain complacent in their assumptions and biases. For Adam, the emotional scars would take time to heal, but his hope remained that, through his experience, others would see the importance of standing up to injustice. He knew that systemic change doesn't happen overnight, but every conversation sparked, every perspective shifted, and every person who made a commitment to doing better would ultimately move society closer to the ideal of fairness and equality. The moment Adam was stopped on that quiet road could have been a turning point for him, one that left him bitter and distrustful of the very system he had once defended. Instead, he chose to use it as a platform for progress. His resilience in the face of dehumanizing treatment, his refusal to accept the status quo, and his determination to share his experience became his most powerful response to the injustice he faced. As more people heard his story and reflected on their own assumptions, it became clear that Adam's ordeal was not just a moment of personal pain. It was a call to action for all of us. It was a call to examine how we treat others, to ask ourselves uncomfortable questions, and to do the hard work of creating a world where justice is not based on appearance, but on the merits of character and integrity.